If you are still manually searching LinkedIn for leads, you're wasting hours, maybe even days on something that can be fully automated. Imagine pulling thousands of target leads, emails included, on autopilot with zero manual effort. No more copying and pasting, no more struggling to find contact details, just high quality leads delivered straight to you. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Sales Navigator is one of the best tools out there for finding high quality leads, but most people use it the hard way. They spend hours applying filters, manually copying profiles into spreadsheets, and then, worst of all, hunting down emails one by one. It is slow, frustrating, and by the time you're done, the best leads are already working with someone else. If you're new here, my name is Clarence. I build automated workflows in n8n to radically improve lead generations. I use these systems in my own business, I use them for my clients, and today I'm giving you the exact blueprint so you can start using them too. The workflow I'll be showcasing today will extract leads directly from Sales Navigator, complete with emails and all the data you need, so you can focus on closing deals instead of chasing leads. With a simple workflow built in n8n, we're going to, 1, find high quality leads using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We're going to extract their full contact details with an API scraper, and we're going to automate the entire process so you can get leads on autopilot. Once this is set up, all you have to do is press a button and watch verified leads come into your CRM automatically. Now, today's focus is purely on extraction, so getting the leads, but once you have them, you can enrich their profiles with even more data and use AI-powered personalization to craft outreach emails that actually get responses. I'll briefly show you how that works too, so you don't just have leads, you have warm prospects ready for contact. The best part is you don't have to build this from scratch or have to copy me in this video, because I just launched a brand new school community where you can download this exact workflow and access every automation I've shared so far, plus exclusive systems I haven't shown anywhere else. I'm constantly adding new blueprints and automation strategies, so if you're serious about scaling your lead generation, this is where you need to be. Link is in the description. Now let's jump in and start building the system. So as I said, the focus is going to be on extracting leads from LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I'll touch upon the enrichment part and the AI personalization part later on in this video. So let me quickly zoom in so you guys can get a glimpse of what I'm talking about. Okay, so from left to right, as always, in order to extract any information from LinkedIn Sales Navigator, we'll be needing to use a scraper. We're using an API scraper to be more precise. I've pasted the URL to the API scraper here. I'll quickly go over it so you know exactly what you need to set this up and connect this to your own workflow. So what you see on screen is the API scraper. It's called LinkedIn Sales Navigator Scraper, so it's very straightforward. To connect a scraper to your n8n workflow, you're going to be needing 3 things. You're going to be needing your API keys, which are personal and can be found in your profile settings. You're going to be needing the URL endpoint, which can be found in the API documentation of API, but I'll quickly show you because it's already set up inside of the HTTP node. And you'll be needing the JSON body, which includes the parameters which are needed for the scraper to start running. As I said, the API keys are inside of your personal profile, inside of the settings, and the endpoint URL is not on this page, but it's just a generic one. All you need is the scraper ID, which is inside of the URL. I know it's just cropped out of your screen, but I'll go over it inside of the node in a second. First, let me show you how to set up this scraper and get the JSON code, which you need to copy and paste later on. So to set this up, first you'll be needing your LinkedIn cookie. Your LinkedIn cookie is essentially just stored data of your LinkedIn profile, which gives the API the right credentials to start using your account to scrape the information. That may have sounded a bit more difficult than it needs to be. All you need to do is download a Chrome extension, the cookie editor. If you press on the question mark, you can just press on the link and download it yourself. Then you would need to go on to your Sales Navigator account, go to the Chrome extension, cookie editor, just export as JSON, go back to the API and paste it in the cookie section. It would look something like this. This is going to be different for each and every one of us because we have different login credentials, but it is very straightforward to set up. As I said, all you need is a Chrome extension and just export it manually, paste it in here, and you're done forever. Then if we scroll down a bit, you can see that it requires us to input a search URL. You can easily get the URL by going to LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Before you straight up copy and paste your URL, you might want to narrow down your search. You can do that by using the filters inside of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. They make it very easy for you to kind of pinpoint your ideal customer and create a very targeted lead list. So let me walk you through some of the options. If you have a specific company in mind you want to target, you can do this under the company section. I wouldn't really recommend filtering it down company by company, but one of the filters I would recommend using is the company headcount one. This allows you to kind of filter for companies with a specific headcount. So let's say you're just like me, you're offering lead generation services. So you're basically replacing an SDR. In that case, you don't want to target companies which already have an extensive sales department because there's a very slim chance they're going to be needing your services. So in my instance, I would, for example, only target businesses which have a headcount between 1 and 10 or maybe 11 and 50 if I'm feeling frisky. Moving on, you can also select or filter by company headquarters location. Might be interesting. Let's say you're only offering service in California, for example. Then this is one you want to fill out. Now we're getting onto the more personal section, their role, like their function, their seniority level, things like that. Since we're doing cold outreach, you always want to target decision makers like founders, CEOs, owners, you name it. So that you can do in this section. We can actually filter straight up by current job title. Let's filter for founders only, include founders, and you can see immediately that it fills up with only founders. In the top right, you can see we have 3 million results for founders, which is a little too broad. So you can narrow it down further, for example, by going into the industry they work in, which let's say is design services. Let's include those. Now we still have over 100,000 results, so narrow it down even further. Let's say we only want founders of design service companies in Miami. There we go. And it leaves us with 363 founders of design services companies in Miami. This, of course, is just an example of how narrow you can actually filter. You can leave it a lot more broad. You can filter for kind of anything you can imagine. As long as the point came across that LinkedIn Sales Navigator is an excellent source for finding leads, you can essentially find an infinite amount of leads. Now that we've filtered down our search, let's copy the URL and paste it inside of the Apify scraper. An important option to select is scrape profile/companies because you want detailed information. Otherwise, this scraper doesn't extract their email addresses. And since this is an example, we only wanted to scrape one page. So how do you now get the JSON code or turn this into JSON code? Simply you go back up and instead of selecting manual, you go to JSON. Now you can see the cookies, which was already in JSON, but also the parameters of the Apify scraper are turned into JSON. You can just copy everything and we can go back to n8n. So back in n8n, we're first going to be setting up the HTTP request node. This node is set to post. As you can see, what this means is we're sending something, we're posting something because we're triggering the Apify scraper on the other side, kind of. And if you remember back to like a second ago when I mentioned 3 things you'll be needing to set this up properly. Well, first you need the URL endpoint, which is in the API documentation. You can just copy this because it's like general. The only thing that differs between different scrapers is the ID of the scraper, which is this. And for this particular one, this is its ID. But if you use a different scraper, you would have to change this and you could keep the rest of the URL, which brings me on to the API key. You have to like insert your credentials. Don't worry, I'm changing my API key after this. I just want to show you guys how to set it up so you can follow along from beginning to end. All we need to do is paste the JSON inside of this node. How you do that is by selecting this option, specifying the body as using JSON, and then pasting it in here. One thing to note, once you've pasted the code in here, you essentially never have to go back to the Apify scraper because inside of the code, you can just change the URL or change other parameters as you wish. So for example, this is the URL I just copied from LinkedIn Sales Navigator after I had filtered it down. But I can just change out this URL for a new one with new filters, and I would never have to go back to Apify. So it's just a one and done setup essentially. So now the HTTP node is completely set up. I have my credentials, I have the endpoint, and I have the JSON body with all the parameters which are needed for the scraper to run. If I would now press test step, the Apify scraper would turn on, but I'll showcase that later on in the video. Now, let's say we would have triggered the Apify scraper and it would start running. And after a while, it would have scraped the LinkedIn Sales Navigator page and it would return us some data, which is in this case called a data set. We want to retrieve the data set. So we want to bring that data inside of our n8n workflow. So inside this HTTP node, you might notice that there's a little difference. We're not sending a body. We're not sending any JSON code. That's not necessary because we're only retrieving data. So we don't need to send anything. All we need to retrieve the data is the correct endpoint URL, and the credentials in this case are API key. Now I'll quickly show you a test run and kind of explain what happens. Okay, so what happened is that I pressed to test this workflow to do a test run. So we sent some signal to the Apify scraper, and you can see on the right side it worked. So it also outputted us a default dataset ID. Please remember this because we're going to be needing this specific dataset ID in the next HTTP node. And it triggered the scraper inside of Apify. So I'll quickly show you what that looks like. So here in Apify at the top, you can see that the scraper is running. That's because we triggered it from inside of our n8n workflow, and it is going to take a while, meaning that while it is running, the dataset ID is still empty because it hasn't scraped any data and there's no data to be collected. Which brings me on to explaining the rest of the flow. Let me first quickly dive into the HTTP node set the get, which job it is to kind of retrieve the data set. So for the person paying close attention, you can see that what was grayed out is now green. That means it's now valid because there's some output earlier on in the flow. So what we did, what this output is, or what is in green, is the dataset ID created by triggering the scraper. That is also why this is a variable. And if you look closely, y and z matches y and z. This is a variable because every time you trigger the scraper, a new dataset ID is generated, and we don't want to manually have to copy and paste each individual dataset. We want that to be collected automatically, and that's why you use this expression. For those not familiar with code, it looks a lot more difficult than it is. How you get this is, I can just delete it for you guys and show you. You just grab it from the left side, paste it in here, and you would have the same. So you don't have to type this out yourself or do some deep dive internet search to figure out how to get this. You can just pull it from the left side, paste it in there, and you're done. As I said, and as I showed you, the scraper was still running, meaning there is no data set or there's no data to be retrieved. In that case, if you set it to always output, it would output an item, but an empty item. And then to check later on if there is actually some data at that point in time to be retrieved, we have to do a little workaround. So first we're using a code. I always read in the comments of my YouTube videos that people are a bit scared when it comes to code, but once again, this is very straightforward. All this code does, and I wrote it down in here, is check if the item it has as input gotten from the previous node is empty. If it is empty, it outputs not ready. If it isn't empty, it just outputs all of the items to be passed through. But in this case, it wasn't ready, so the output is not ready. Then we have set up a if node. The if node checks the output from the previous node, which was in this case not ready. So if the JSON status, which is once again just what I took from here and pasted here, is not equal to not ready, it would go to the true branch, but because it is equal to not ready, it goes to the false branch, which triggers a wait node, which is set to a time interval. In this case, the time interval is, I believe, 2 minutes. So this wait node would actually wait 2 minutes before sending all the information back to the merge node, which would then trigger the HTTP node again to ask it again to retrieve the data. The data would then be ready. So all of the items would be in here. They would be passed through here. It would not output not ready this time, but it would just output data. So this would also be true instead of false, because the output from this would not equal not ready, and it would be outputted to our CRM. Because scraping leads, and especially all of the information from those leads, takes quite a while, I will save both you and me some time, and I'll show you what it would look like if it would retrieve a data set which is indeed already done, finished. Okay, so as I said, if the data set was ready, it would fetch all of the information. Don't know why it's taking a while, because it probably is a lot. That would look something like this for this particular scraper. So it would have their job title, company name, profile URL, job description, etc., etc. It would pass it on to the code node, which would say, okay, there is actually something, so not ready is not needed, which would pass it on to the if node, which would then say, okay, not ready is not included in the output, which would then output all of the items to our CRM, which would look something like this. As I said, I use Airtable as my CRM. So inside of the Airtable, which is essentially just like Google Sheets, I've set up the table in the following way, like first name, full name to be uploaded, their email address, title, company name, but also their personal LinkedIn URL, their company LinkedIn URL, and their company website. And you can see that everything was present inside of the data. So his first name is Michael, his personal LinkedIn URL, his email address. So we have an address to send an email to. We have his company website, which we can use to scrape and enrich the lead. And the same goes for his LinkedIn URL. We can see that he is the founder of the company. So he's actually the decision maker we want to be targeting. Now you have the leads inside of your CRM. You still need to enrich them. Enriching just means gathering data on the lead. And why would you need that data? Well, you need that data because you want to write a personalized email to them. Cold outreach is all about personalization, not sending bulk emails. So with just the email address, you have very little. You want to do personalized outreach because that success rate is many times higher. So what you could do next is just connect it to this snippet of a workflow. All of these snippets that you see on screen are inside of the school community. What this part of the workflow does is it takes the LinkedIn organization URL. As you can see, I just dragged it in from the left, pasted it here, and it fetches me all of the HTML. I'll show you guys quickly. So as I said, it fetches me the HTML from the LinkedIn organization page. It then filters all of that HTML into readable text. As you can see, the HTML is on the left side. There's a lot of code, which we don't need, and it's also wasted input tokens if you would input it into a large language model. We use this code, which simply filters out all of the unnecessary code inside of the HTML code and returns us plain text. You can see the plain text on the output side. This is all of the text that is on the LinkedIn organization page. You can check it out for yourself if you want to verify. And what we would do next is we would ask a large language model, OpenAI in this case, to analyze all of that data from the LinkedIn page and answer me some questions or write me a summary. I'll quickly go over the prompt so you guys get a better understanding. So I've asked it to analyze the scraped LinkedIn profile data of a company and then to output me the company insights. So I've asked it to summarize the company's stated mission and vision. You can see that over here. I've asked it to output recent posts by the company. You can see that here in recent updates. And I've asked it to output the number of employees and like their business model, which you can see at the bottom. Why would you need that information and what can you do with that information? Well, you could plug this onto another large language model, which would take all of the output, like the entire analysis of the business, and write a personalized email opener to be used in the first cold email you send out to the lead, which just increases your chances of a reply massively because it makes it look like you've done your research into the company and you actually know what you're talking about. Little does he know, it has all been automated. What you could even do is, instead of linking this directly to a large language model node to write a personalization, you could link it to scrape the company website first, gather all that data, which also features oftentimes testimonials. You could then attach this to a large language model node, which would summarize everything from the company LinkedIn profile and the website to create a very comprehensive picture. And another large language model node would read that comprehensive description, extract the most relevant topic to write a personalized line about, and then plug it onto this to write the personalized line to get even better results. I just mean to say that you can plug and play with this however you'd like. You can make it as complicated as you want. Possibilities are literally limitless. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what was possible and to show you how I would use this or how I use this in my day-to-day business. But all right, that is it. You now have a fully automated system to extract high quality leads from LinkedIn Sales Navigator, completely hands-free. If you want to download this exact workflow plus every automation I've shared in previous videos and a bunch of exclusive ones I haven't shown anywhere else, head over to my school community. I'm constantly adding new blueprints, advanced workflows, and automation strategies. So if you're serious about scaling your lead generation, you don't want to miss this. As I said, link is in the description. I want to thank you for watching. If you found this valuable, hit that like button so more people can see it. And if you want more automation breakdowns, sales systems, and AI-powered workflows, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment if you have any questions. I try to read and respond to every single one of them, and I'll see you in the next video.